Excellent. So I'll just reiterate kind of the introduction to our project. Our main final deliverable is a report, and we have included an introduction, an executive summary, and we have got two main sections. The first section is focusing on why we believe that this student supported network would be a good next move, Step Up One. And then we also have a second section, which is focused on our 5 main strategies on how we would recommend you go about implementing the strategy and being able to kind of grow the network, and any barriers that might come along, and how we think you would be best advised to overcome them. So I'm going to start by kind of summarizing the main benefits for this network. And the main benefits for Step Up One, we believe, is that firstly, it would raise the profile of Step Up One among students who then may become future employees, or they might end up working for potential clients you have. Of course, it's all about kind of, word of mouth. And if we're starting with one university, and they know about Step Up One, they know that there's this network that you can be involved with. We know how easy that can spread. And especially as the network grows and grows and they have more kind of collaboration with other chapters, we believe this would be a great thing for Step Up One in helping you kind of grow as a social enterprise and collaborate with more partners going forwards. We have, through our research, found a few different organizations where they do kind of use a student supporter kind of network model, and they are in the refugee space. And so we've kind of drawn some inspiration from that. And of course, you could collaborate with them, but we think in building your own network, it kind of allows you to retain that agency. You can minimize cost. You can kind of focus on your very kind of individual mission, which is on kind of reskilling these refugees. And kind of, again, it's just all about that kind of control and, keeping people inspired and focused on what you want to achieve. We also think students are a great population group to work with because of the skills and experience they have in research, written, verbal communication, personal branding, and of all the skills that they've had to use in order to apply for university. They're also more used to having voluntary opportunities, and might have more kind of free time. They're very enthusiastic and keen to gain any kind of experience for their CVs or resumes. And so we think they are kind of a great demographic to focus on. And then we also think it's great in terms of facilitating StepUp.One's mission without increasing the burden on, I'm sure, what are your very busy current employees. And then thinking about the main benefits for students, there's plenty of different roles which are going to kind of explore in more depth. But first and foremost, students are gaining experience with their written applications and interviews, so the whole application process. They can also receive certification in cultural sensitivity training as part of onboarding. They can develop key skills in research, communication, public speaking, problem solving within their various student supporter roles. And there's also an executive committee. Again, we'll mention this in our operational strategy, and that allows the students to develop skills in management, outreach, and marketing. And they also have the opportunity to shape the network through the various feedback channels. And finally, they also can attend numerous social, professional, and educational events, which will be facilitated through the chapters and through the regional hubs and hopefully a national conference. And so through this, they can kind of gain industry insight, they can expand their professional network, and they can receive recognition for their achievements, which again links back to the benefits for Step Up One. Through recognition of their achievements, they can post that on LinkedIn. So it's all about kind of what are the mutual benefits here? And then, of course, your main mission is about helping these refugees, improve their prospects. And so, these refugees can receive support for research, written and verbal communication, personal branding, and the opportunity to refine their skills, kind of, getting instant feedback from these students and resolving any difficulties they might have in securing long-term employment after reskilling. We kind of want to close any potential gap between that reskilling and then them actually being able to start at a job. And they also have the opportunity to shape the network through various feedback channels. So those are the main benefits that we foresee. I then would like to go on to Tim and see if he can explain the operational strategy. Just to kind of outline, we have 5 main strategies. These are operations, growth, marketing, so that's marketing of the student supporter network, onboarding, and evaluation. So
Awesome.
Tim, please could you explain a little bit about operational strategy and try and keep it concise, and then after this we can go through and have a conversation about any questions.
Yeah. Just before we hand it over to Tim, I just want to add, I think in my view, I might have told you, I'm also starting to work with a lot of students, from Paris. And in the last 6 months, what I have learned, by truly working with students is, especially in the last 6 months, the way StepUp.One has kind of transformed itself from doing a very simple set of jobs to, what I today consider world-class jobs with world-class companies using world-class platforms, using world-class skills. What these students that I worked with really got, in reality is a window to a world that would have been impossible for them to see, right? Like today, we work with at least 100 founders from Silicon Valley, right? Raising capital for 10 of them, generating revenue for 50, 60 of them, right? Building teams for 10 of them. Now you can imagine, like, these are not some small mom and pop startups, on corner shops, right? These are real big startups from with really big ideas. And even though, as a student, you really do not have any experience or expertise to help these guys, not as the refugee, right? Now, there are 2 people who don't know how to do the job. But by being with them in the process of coming to those meetings and helping those refugees and being a part of those WhatsApp groups and I see like unbelievable amount of, some kind of a transfer. I don't know what it is. People get that understanding of how the real world works in reality, right? There is this world where I can say a number of amazing things about StepUp.One. Like, we do all these big things, blah, blah, blah. But then the reality or the rubber meeting the road happens when you are with your client for a few months. Then what happens when you raise capital. How many investors are going to say no, right? What happens when you try and generate scale up? So I think this reality of doing, getting involved in a real entrepreneurial activity in a very cozy, like, you're not putting yourself on the spot. You're not like going to take the hit if you don't deliver, but you're in this nice cozy consulting thing where there is a company, there is a refugee who's doing the work 24/7. And then there is you who's observing everything, and it's beautiful, So this, in my view, is such a rich experience, for any student at any level. Because
yes, 100%.
It is something that I'm seeing, and I'm really, because all that you have summarized, right, they're really good. But this one, this ability to before, it's going to be 3-4 years before they will do their own entrepreneurship, or they do. But having the 3 years of heads, that space to learn about the real world is priceless.
Yes, 100%. I think there's so many experiences and skills that they can gain through this network, and we really want to highlight the fact that it's like they can contribute in kind of a small but meaningful way to the lives of these refugees, helping them secure employment, but they can also benefit from the wider network and the people they will meet, and hopefully connections to StepUp.One and to your partners and things like that, which hopefully we can explore a little bit more. And so if Tim, you would like to kind of go into the detail of the operations, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe.
Yeah, thanks, Zoe. So the operational strategy essentially talks about 2 things, and that's what students will be doing and how those students will be managed. So what students will be doing, so the student-refugee interactions, we think should be split into two sort of roles, which we've called engines and interactors. So the interactors are the people that are perhaps a bit more confident speaking one-to-one with refugees, going on calls with them, providing sort of audience for their pictures, giving them public speaking advice, all these things that hopefully will give refugees the chance to sort of develop a bit of confidence and overcome that sense of intimidation about interacting with people in the industry. So as a sort of bridging tool, and Interactors also, we think, best place to sort of develop a better working relationship with refugees, which is useful sort of, as we mentioned, with the sort of exposure to the real world and the sort of professional interactions that involves. And then there's the engines. So these are sort of more behind the scenes student supporters, and they're doing sort of research tasks. We know there has been some changes to the brief, and initially we thought they would be well placed to sort of maybe research potential investors. Now we're not so sure that that's what their function would be, but even so, they can still really benefit the refugees by sort of adding a cultural awareness or a corporate awareness element to it. So they can read through the news, through the industry updates, and provide summaries of what's been going on, maybe information about an investor that is relevant for refugees. And they can also help with refugees outreach. So by giving them advice on CVs or blog posts or LinkedIn profiles and things like that, which refugees might not obviously have had much exposure to. And so the way that this would be sort of administrated, we think would be really useful to have an online portal, so that refugees can so this would be mainly for student supporters to basically log their work, but also for refugees to post what type of help they need. So refugees would literally be able to give a brief description of what they need help with, post it there, and then a student supporter can match to that sort of job posting, if you like, and that's a sort of pairing, and that can then be for however long it needs for the task to be sort of completed. If they need help with sort of public speaking, that might be a few sessions. If it's just, hey, can someone proofread this blog post, then that would be a shorter thing, and then that would be approved by the executive committee. And just touching on a meeting that we had at the start of this term about ChatGPT and how that might influence students' roles. So we understand that obviously ChatGPT has kind of revolutionized the way StepUp.One are training their refugees, and that might have impact on the scope of what student supporters can do. So we understand that they might be ChatGPT might be taking up certain roles, like helping with English and writing skills and things like that. But we still think there are a lot of gaps there which students can fill. That might be helping administer ChatGPT, which you will be best placed to sort of decide on, whether students can be trained in helping administer the use of ChatGPT and how refugees can actually use it as a tool. But it could also just be the elements of ChatGPT that are just missing. So the fact that there's information missing post 2021, that there are certain inaccuracies that can arise, and the way things are phrased is sometimes not quite right. And also the sort of personal aspect of interacting with a real person, we think is really invaluable, and that's something that students are still able to provide and should be sort of prioritized for. And then finally, just how is this all going to be organized? So we're envisioning, as Catherine will talk about, the sort of a chapter organization, which is, so each chapter will be based around a university or a city with multiple universities, and each chapter would have a lead organizing the sort of so representing the chapter, organizing sessions, networking sessions, and things like that. And also, so this chapter lead will then kind of have a role in organizing the rest of the student executive committee. The other roles would be a social media representative, an outreach representative, and a training representative. Social media, obviously, to run the social media and sort of spread the message, to reward students for the work they've been doing. The outreach representative to spread the word and to market the student network. And the training representative has a really important role in actually getting students from the stage where they have no experience with, or have little experience with, actually working with refugees, to the point where they feel confident they can sort of provide a really valuable service. So that's the operational strategy.
Correct. No, you guys want to add something? Let me just add, this. I think this is what you have. Oops. I think this is what you have explained, right, Tim? The various the interactors, which is the interpersonal skills between students and refugees, then the research skills, the ChatGPT skills, and the branding stuff, and the awareness. I think these are the engines that you have explained, isn't it, Tim?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. I just want to be very direct and straightforward with you guys, right? So I think the number one thing that really going to benefit us is the interaction, the human interaction between a refugee and let's say his or her student mentor. I think that is priceless in my view, and I'm not sure the operationalizing that interpersonal thing would work. Like any refugee is trying to get help from any student, maybe the best way to get help, because it is operationally the right thing to do, because but I just feel like the right way, because I have spent like 4 years with these guys and they just don't open up easily with even me sometimes. So it's really important to find a way where Zoe is responsible for, let's say 5 of them, because she can easily handle a couple of, requests, something like that would be a lot more like, it would be, such a much better connection. They will know each other, they will know their weaknesses and strengths, and they will learn from each other really well. Rather than, anybody from any, this side is taking help from anyone from the other side. The work will get done, I'm pretty sure about it. But I think the whole idea is for them to feel normal, for them to feel that there is somebody who's going to help and I can rely on that person and they are my friend over a period of time. I think that is so important in these interactions. It's not just the subject matter, but also the warmth and the ease of the trust, that comes along with it is so critical, for these guys to work with the students. And that's a quick feedback.
I totally appreciate your concern about building that kind of slightly longer term relationship, and that's definitely something that you could factor in terms of building the network, and in terms of the pairing that goes between student supporters and the refugees. However, I think there is still some kind of room for flexibility, and even though we've kind of designed this model to be slightly more on demand to kind of suit the needs of students, as Tim has said, if there is a task which takes a little bit more time, might be kind of a few more sessions, there's definitely scope to do that. They can take on smaller tasks. They can read the job postings and take on whatever they can manage. And so there might be someone who's like, I need help with public speaking, I've got this thing coming up in a couple of months' time. They're kind of aware of the timeline of that, and they can take that on, but they can also do some smaller tasks along the side, which it kind of easier to kind of tick off. Someone just needs help overviewing their CV or something like that. So it's like there's a whole range of tasks, and that we think is kind of what builds a more sustainable model, because obviously not all students are going to have time to kind of commit to a longer term relationship. So it's kind of having the scope to kind of do both, which we think is really important.
No, that's a very important point of view. Very important point of view. I think
perhaps also with the language barrier. I know that Anis has spoken a lot about the refugees' comfortability with English. So maybe even one of those like matching skills things, instead of like necessarily needing a specific task, maybe it could just be, hey, I could appreciate having a friend to converse with to practice my English skills. So that could be one of those pieces where it's still sort of matching someone to that, but instead of necessarily being a specific task, it is more of just that conversational piece.
Yeah, agreed. Look, I'm just, giving you a practical, just, I won't take too much time. Practically, what is happening on the ground today is there is enormous amount of feedback that they need. They need, is this post good? This is the number one feedback that they all need. They are like churning out, I don't know, 1 or 2 a day. And it will take someone like me like 30 seconds to tell them whether it's good or bad, just 30 seconds. But they just need those 30 seconds, 2 or 3 times a day. It is the biggest help that they really need. Just reading something that they have produced and saying, yeah, looks good, right? That's a 30 or a 1 minute job, right? Then there are these maybe an hour long job, which is, hey, I have come up with this new prompt engineering for developing this kind of a story. Can you check my prompt? Does it produce good stories for these 3 different topics, right? Because this is something that they're working heavily. Every day they are engineering a new prompt, right? The tone of the client, they're capturing the tone of the client, they're capturing the style of the client, the writing style, the writing tone, whether it is in first person or in third person. So they are mastering it. But I think once again, you can say it is also feedback, but it is literally not feedback on the end content, but it is feedback on the engineered prompt. Is this prompt behaving the way it should behave? And that I think is just phenomenal, right? Because every day, every week, these people are coming out with new prompts to do new things that they never did before. And therefore, that will be it'll be a great learning for the student and the refugee, right? Because I don't think this prompt engineering is something that the students are going to be like, very good at, when they begin this, but it's not rocket science. And the last point I want to make is, this is a bigger thing, like public speaking. Like somebody is going to the World Economic Forum and he's going to have a speech in the forum. He wants help. That's a bit more longer, and also research, right? I don't think these people are ever. I don't know. Maybe it's a bit premature, but I think the research I have engaged a bunch of students to do some research on thing. The only research that we are interested in, and a ground research, is this is how we do a job today, right? How can we make it better? That is the only research that we are asking anybody to help us with, right? So we are actually giving them, this is how the job gets done today. 25 steps. Each step is done using this platform and this skill. Are there better platforms out there, better AI systems out there to do these things? Is the only big research item that we have on our agenda. We do not want to see. What I think is, a student, especially in Oxford, right, is going to get millions of opportunities outside StepUp.One for writing amazing research. We do not want to be one more person, to do research. We are more on the ground. We are really helping, a very interesting population and connecting to a very, very, very different population. And there, the biggest thing is reskilling. How can we skill these people using the most amazing techniques in the simplest possible way? And then how can we do the work, to deliver world-class results? These are the only 2 things: how to get them the skills, how to do the job so that we deliver great outcomes. So these are really not, I wouldn't say research, they are more of like improvement opportunities. Like, in the NHS, they keep doing these audits, they already do something in a particular way, and then they audit, and then they try to improve it better and better and better. I know, so that's what we really need, how to do better.
Yeah, I completely understand that. StepUp.One, like your mission is about kind of reskilling these refugees and helping them get into that employment. I think we have just identified the fact that, in order to get that employment, they are going to need to understand, the client, the future employee, the future employer well. And so kind of utilizing ChatGPT, helping them kind of extract information from that. Again, as we said, ChatGPT doesn't have information post 2021. So there might be kind of relevant things from the news, things that they should be aware of that kind of students can help kind of provide them on, or they might just be like, oh, that's a little bit out to date, and kind of help them, demonstrate their skills the best of their ability. So you're kind of doing the reskilling, these students are supporting them in kind of securing the job, securing the role, and kind of their long-term kind of development, like beyond
Absolutely.
this.
Absolutely. So Zoe, if I just give one feedback on the entire 5 engines, the one thing that really matters, for the refugees, don't even bother about the clients, right, is feedback. If we can have this entire student network as a feedback network, anybody can ask anything and they get a feedback within like 30 seconds, right, would be a huge success for us. Would be a huge success, because it is just I just imagine a million refugees creating a million content every day. Just imagine how big the network should be in order to give feedback without overwhelming the network. You see, let's say we have a million refugees and we have 100,000, not 100,000, let's say we have a million students on both sides. How can we make sure that we don't overwhelm the student community? Right? You imagine a million post gets dropped on your WhatsApp. Imagine that happens. That's not going to happen, isn't it?
If I can pop in though, I think if I'm not getting this mistaken, I believe that with this model that Team One has come up with, the ultimate goal would be to build the refugee skills to a point where eventually they don't need every single thing reviewed. Instead, they're being taught, how do I conduct research? How do I best utilize ChatGPT? How do I learn about branding and awareness, so that eventually they're not always relying on a third party? I think Team One's vision, from what I'm hearing, is sort of building refugees to be more autonomous, to be more independent, and to really build their skills so that eventually they can trust in their own work. I understand in terms of language, like proofreading, but I imagine that you as well would hope that eventually these workers are proud and able to establish their own original work.
No, Salma, I really wish, look, think about us, right? The 6 of us, even we would love a feedback. Let's say I just wrote a post, if I had a small bunch of friends, to just say, hey guys, just have a look at it and tell me, does it really, appeal to you? We all love a feedback. I don't think this will ever go away. It's nothing to do with whether they're good or bad. It's just that it's human, and especially for them, it's going to be,
perhaps they could provide feedback amongst one another, if they're able to go to one another even for feedback, and not always.
Yeah, which is what is happening heavily today. And that is exactly why I'm saying the most important thing that the student network can provide, and it is also the least intrusive, if you think about it, Selma. But what I'm saying is, I'm just giving you a scale problem, right? If 1 million posts needs to be reviewed by 1 million students, without dumping 1 million posts on a WhatsApp group with 1 million students, which means nobody knows which one they should, handle, isn't it? So it's like, Uber, like every day, they don't know which driver to call, right? They don't disturb all the 1 million drivers, even though there are 1 million requests, isn't it? So if we can figure out a way to disturb maybe 1 or 2, or until the person says, yeah, I'll take it and I'll give a quick feedback, isn't it? Something like that would be amazing. Yeah, but anyways, I just wanted to tell you, this is the single biggest need of the hour: feedback, right? Feedback gives them confidence. If somebody keep getting like 5-6 times, they all get, hey, good, this is good, this is good, this is good, and then they say, wow, I think I've cracked it, right? I know and they get confidence, and they might not need feedback after that, right? But having seen this game for some time now, I just feel it'll be the single biggest workload or work unit that will come and fall on the students.
Do you feel as though this system with the engines doesn't provide that feedback? Because it seems as though this engine is merely just categorizing the feedback. So whether someone needs feedback on, did I ask ChatGPT the right question, or whether they need feedback, did I get this research synthesis right?
No, it does. I'm not complaining about, the engines.
No. I'm just trying to understand.
The engines have really nicely, split the feedback. Is it a simple feedback on a post? Is it a prompt engineering feedback on a ChatGPT? It's beautifully, done. All I'm simply saying is the thing that we need to solve or think about is how does, it's about speed. A client is waiting on the other side. You've done something, you've put something, and you need a feedback, like, just tadax. If you can crack like a Uber like model, right? We just give it to Zoe. Zoe is busy with her exams. We give it to Tim. Tim is busy, not looking at it. Go to Zara. Zara says, okay, I'll just like, I accept the request. And she said, and then, just say, okay, this is good. And then it doesn't go to Kath.
I mean, I think we're trying to imagine some kind of online portal where it's like everyone has access to all of the different kind of postings. Again, they're kind of categorized by what the refugee has selected. So there might be some kind of forced options, but then they can also kind of elaborate a little bit more on kind of what they're looking for. So it could be like, I need someone to help me overview my CV, and everyone who's made kind of that similar kind of request, it's all kind of categorized. Anyone can kind of log on to the portal via their kind of student access. They can click on it and be like, okay, I've done it, tick that off. So anyone can kind of jump on, rather than kind of being like, okay, Zoe needs to do this role and Zoe's not available right now, and I'm just going to have to wait until she's there. Kind of making it on demand so that everyone can kind of step up, and that's kind of what allows the network to kind of grow and be flexible and meet people's needs.
Zoe, I get the point. I will think about it. Don't worry about it. It is definitely an online portal. I just wanted to think of a mechanism where, it doesn't bother the entire crowd. We can store it. Let's say there is a 10,000 posts that was approved by you guys. All 10,000 can be stored and categorized, but the one person or the, like, who is going to give that feedback within the next 30 seconds or within the next 30 minutes, if there is a way we could do that, if, nicely, without disturbing the million people, but just disturbing 5 people, one after the other, just give everybody a minute. And if, it's just exactly how Uber works, right? The way Uber works is round robin, right? It goes to the nearest guy. It gives them an option to accept the trip. And if the driver doesn't accept the trip, it just goes to the next guy, and then it goes to the next guy, and then it goes to the next guy until somebody accepts it, right? So I'm just thinking of a way to, like, make that feedback effective, because feedback in essence is about speed. Usually people are, if a feedback comes after 30 minutes, it may not be that useful because it's lost its value. But cool. I think I really enjoy this one. But I just want you to know, like, when you said, Zoe, what is the most important thing? I said, the most important thing for a student is their window to the real world, and how real world works and real opportunities happen. I think from capital to revenue to team building, it is like beautiful, right? From a learning perspective. So similarly here, I think it is feedback, the ability for you to read something and shoot, is really powerful here.
Yeah, 100%. I think, we could go on for ages and have a proper in-depth discussion about this, but for the sake of time, I think we'll move on to Catherine, who's going to explain a little bit more about the growth strategy. So that is kind of what chapters are, what's the regional hub, and what do we mean by the national conference. So if that's okay with you, Catherine?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you guys so much for creating this graphic. I think Zoe made this. It looks incredible. But yeah, so I think our growth strategy is pretty simple, and we honestly drew a lot of inspiration from all of our beginning conversations with you, and then from a few organizations that we looked at that do somewhat adjacent work to what you guys do, just in the sense that they draw on students and they work with refugees. So we tried to create one that would work well for easy replication, especially as we envision this network to expand. And so initially we proposed the development of chapters, and then as these expand, regional hubs, and then eventually the creation of what I will describe later, but a national conference. And so essentially we think that universities provide a really good forum for having all these students in one place. We think the internal structure would be outlined as Tim outlined in our operational strategy. And they would organize recruitment, executive committee elections, workshops for development of key skills, and then foster collaboration among university peers. We think that just the location of it provides a really good opportunity for both discussion among students about StepUp.One to continue to get more people on board, but also just for more people to work and collaborate and network, and adds more benefits to the students themselves. And then as this expands and chapters are developed, we do think that there's grounds for the creation of regional hubs. And these would work to connect the different chapters across the geographical region, which would allow for increased networking and collaboration, which is beneficial to students. In particular, we think that they could also host a variety of events, including talks, discussions, social events, and that they would be beneficial for student supporters and encourage more for discussions, for more feedback, to continue to improve each individual chapter and then also the whole system as a whole. And then finally, we think that we would like to create, we also considered pairing chapters with or regional hubs with particular camps, as you might choose to expand, or even as we were just discussing, if there was some way potentially to disperse those millions of posts to different chapters at 2 different hubs, just so it does help to reduce that burden and that potential to overwhelm the system. So it's not necessarily as inflexible or rigid as assigning like one task to one person, but potentially just following our previous discussion, there could be grounds for a specific chapter or a specific region to then be associated with some subset or some category of task, just to in some way alleviate that burden. We never formally discussed that, but that's just something kind of relevant to this.
Sure.
But in general, we found that there could be some potential issues to this, because if certain chapters or regional hubs are smaller, just kind of getting off the grounds, or maybe less successful, that could disadvantage certain groups or specific camps. Therefore, we decided to kind of continue forward with that flexible model that we've conveyed. And then as a long-term aim, we're really excited about the development of an annual national conference. We believe this could bring together all chapters in one place every year, providing an overview of the achievements of chapters, hubs, delivering testimonies from student supporters, you telling the story of StepUp.One, and then casting a vision for the future. We think this could be a highly publicized event, which would inspire and encourage the efforts of all the student supporters and then StepUp.One as a whole. And we believe that it would increase student attachment to the efforts and vision of StepUp.One, providing encouragement for notable achievements for particular chapters and individuals, offer insight into the industry and potentially some of these founders and the incredible stories of the work that you guys are doing, and then also, again, help foster connections among students, among like-minded peers who attend this conference. As a result, we think StepUp.One and refugees would benefit from increased student productivity, and then also enthusiasm for the aim of reskilling refugees. We considered implementing some sort of prize giving component to this national conference as an increased incentive. However, we rejected the idea of prizes in favor of honors. We were a bit apprehensive about the effect that prizes may have, detracting from students' more altruistic motivations and also shifting the focus off of refugees, which we want to make sure is the focus both in the day-to-day work of the student supporters, in the chapters, in the hubs, and then also in this national conference as well. Yeah, so basically we see the kind of more near future to be implementation of one or several chapters, kind of let them get off the ground based on our other strategies that we've proposed. Eventually, similar regions would be linked up with these regional hubs. And then hopefully as a long-term aim, just to kind of connect all these vast chapters and hubs that have been created, a national conference. And we hope that this structure would allow for easy replication and also just a really good platform for networking, celebration, and increased productivity.
Wow. That's really cool, actually. You know, I mean, I'm just imagining a chapter is probably something that is linked to a uni, so that at least, you know, people can meet, you know, if they're from the same chapter, you know, they can meet. I'm not able to imagine chapters, you know, what each chapter would do differently than the other. But definitely it is really a good idea for uniting the people, you know, within one context, isn't it? And I've seen this, and
So sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say, we actually envision them doing essentially the same thing at each individual university within each chapter, but just kind of in these workshops we've talked about, in recruitment efforts, just kind of centralizing it at one specific university, so students have a greater access to learn about the opportunity, to join, to make connections to people that are doing it, rather than someone super far away who they might not know at a different university, and then to kind of just have like face-to-face feedback and face-to-face interactions with people who are also pursuing this general mission. But essentially no differences among the chapters.
Awesome. Yeah. No, I think this is really cool. And this can be very easily managed through social media. For example, you know, in StepUp.One, we were playing with a company page for refugees, a company page for clients, and so on and so forth. So it's really easy to create these chapters and people to be a part of those chapters and posting into those chapters. It's it's not a very difficult thing to implement the idea of chapters. And chapters are close to uni and location, and therefore they will it's a great idea. I think it's just that I'm just a bit not able to imagine, like I told you in the previous one, right? 1 million people here and 1 million students there. How I'm just not able to imagine the role of chapters. It's good from the point of view of the students. If the let's say 10 of you are together in the Oxford chapter, it's good. It'll keep you motivated. You have another small thing. But yeah, I think from the point of view of refugee, it doesn't matter from where this answer is, but it'll be good if there is some kind of a connection, isn't it, at some point in time. But it's okay. I think many things have to evolve.
I think ultimately refugees are going to benefit massively, but indirectly through this, by establishing a sense of community, which is kind of based around a university, people who actually have connections to kind of people. Obviously, it's like this whole system, it can be done remotely, and that is the great advantage of this. But I think having something which is rooted in a university, which can be a little bit more kind of physically based, is actually incredibly motivating. And more motivated students are obviously going to want to take on more roles, more responsibilities, and that will then benefit the refugees long term.
Absolutely. So if you think about it, this was the method that gave Facebook so much success, isn't it? They just started in Harvard and Stanford, 2 universities, and it was really simple. But and then you just keep adopting the next and the next and the next, and yeah, I think it is definitely a really good model to go for it. Yeah,
exactly. And sorry, I was just going to say, you touched a little bit about kind of social media, and so our next strategy was just on marketing. I'm not going to spend too long on it because we've got 2 other strategies which I think have a little bit more kind of substance to them. Sure. Essentially with the marketing strategy, of course you can promote this through freshers fairs, because it would be a voluntary opportunity is how we are envisioning it, but we can explore that a little bit more later. And so we can kind of advertise it as a society. It can be pushed through that. Obviously we've said we've got kind of an outreach representative, so they can kind of assume responsibility for that. But then we also very much want to kind of push things on social media. That's why we've got a social media representative. And so even though it could seem like a lot of social media accounts, we think that this kind of structure works. And so there'd be one kind of central social media account, which would be for the student supporter network. So perhaps this could be at StepUp.One network on Instagram and Facebook. And this kind of conveys all the key information about the network. We think consistency in the kind of messaging and the kind of key information is very important. And then there would be social media accounts for each individual chapter. Again, this could be established quite easily. So it could be, for example, if it was King's College London, it could be at StepUp.One KCL. And they kind of would repost key information from the central account. Again, consistency and messaging. But then they also kind of have the liberty to produce original content about the daily activities of students, kind of daily achievements, kind of any socials they're doing. All of this is important for kind of driving recruitment, showing people what they're doing, also giving the students that sense of accomplishment. So we think that's all very important. And then kind of further down the line, once kind of there's more regional hubs, then we can establish a regional hub kind of social media account. So if we're thinking again about the example of KCL, then there could be an at StepUp.One London page. And again, that could be reposting information from the central social media account. It's all kind of being directed to the central social media account, so people shouldn't get too lost. But then it can also kind of provide less frequent updates about the activities and achievements of each chapter. So again, it's all to do with that motivation, and it's all kind of linking back to that central account, but it kind of gives people a little bit more kind of autonomy, and it can kind of tailor it specifically to kind of the interests of the students from each chapter. So that's kind of our main kind of marketing strategy, is through social media, and it should kind of link nicely with the recruitment drive as well. And so moving on from that, we then have onboarding. So if I think I've said, Tim, please could you explain a little bit about kind of our onboarding process?
Yeah, sure. I'll also keep this brief, just to give an idea of the general considerations that we've made. So for the sort of executive committee, for each chapter, we've thought there's certain criteria that we want these people to have, and probably to be, these are more sort of higher requirements than for the student supporters. So we want people with specific skills for each role. So for the social media representative, we want someone who's obviously got experience with social media. Same for the training rep and outreach. And the chapter lead would have to be sort of demonstrate experience managing a team. All these things that I'm sure you've already considered in the way you recruit StepUp.One professionals. But yeah, these people would have to sort of commit to a 1-year role, I think, because it's necessary to get the ball rolling, that the core team is really there for at least in the medium term, and can really try and concentrate their efforts to make sure this chapter sort of grows.
Yep.
And then StepUp.One can sort of maybe do a panel interview for the chapter lead to make sure they've got a suitable person to get this up and running. Because if you get the right person in as a chapter lead, then I think that's really key to getting it off the floor. Someone with a vision to sort of for how the chapter can grow, and with a vision for how they can make it a real community as well. Because I think that's a big challenge.
Yeah. Tim and Zoe and Selma, what should be a good objective for the chapter itself, because at the end of the day, if I was the chapter lead, right, I just want to be able to say that, look what I've done, or something that you guys think. I know you can say a lot, you can say some big things about the overall StepUp.One and what.
Mhm.
But like, what can you say about, look, from Oxford, we did this, which is like, something, do you think?
I think we'll definitely cover that more in our evaluation strategy. But just to touch on it briefly now, I think that's why we kind of have this idea of a national conference where people are being recognized for their achievements. So, obviously when someone logs on to the online portal and says, I'm accepting this run, I've completed these tasks, and they're kind of, summarizing what they've achieved, all of that kind of is associated with that chapter.
That'll be amazing, actually. Like, what if we did a leaderboard for each chapter, and then that leaderboard is visible publicly with everybody? That'll be amazing. Yeah. Cool.
That's something that definitely could be considered. So we'll address that a little bit more in the evaluation strategy, but we'll just kind of stick with onboarding for now. Sure. If Tim would like to continue. Yeah,
definitely. So once we've got that core team, they can then basically select market the student supporter network, try and get people involved, and then do the whole sort of onboarding process and to decide who's eligible. And I think we'll cast a pretty wide net. We don't want this to be really exclusive, because it's an opportunity at the end of the day for students to develop their skills, and not to be the finished product yet. But the training representative would be again quite important here. Sorry, so first of all, we have sort of criteria for the different roles. So engines, we don't think we need to do an interview for engines, because they wouldn't really be on calls that much. Their sort of face-to-face interaction isn't as important, but there would be a written application, the details of which you can read about in our report. And interactors additionally would have to do, I think, an interview of some sort. That could be an in-person interview or an online interview. But to be honest, to save time and resources, we've thought a video submission interview is a really good alternative as well. I'm sure you're familiar, and that could involve like a scenario question, for instance, how they would structure a 15-minute call with a refugee, and they would also get maybe a video to respond to, with perhaps an actor like representing a refugee talking about something and how they would respond to that. And then both roles would get sort of a document which gives them some information about Kakuma, about StepUp.One, so they know really what the vision is and what they need to incorporate in the work. And for the more specific, getting them up to standard and to deliver a quality service to refugees, we have like outlined what we envision for the training. So this would be delivered mainly by the training representative, which is why it's really important that the training representative is in a really good position and has done, has experience with those sort of thing, but is also, trained in safeguarding and also probably vetted by StepUp.One, so that they can deliver a good workshop. So the students would then undergo a workshop, and this would be for everyone, for engines and for interactors, so they could kind of learn from each other and collaborate. And then additionally to that, there would be an online course focusing on ethics and cultural sensitivity training. There are already courses like this out there, so
we can easily borrow.
Yeah, exactly. And that can be part of the tangible ways.
Just sorry to interrupt, just because of the time, I'm just like, I think the core message that I take from you in terms of onboarding is it has to be, in my opinion, other than chapter leads, 100% zero touch. As in, like, if anybody wants to join, if anybody wants to learn, if anybody wants to, get in and be an active member, there should not be any kind of, interaction or touch point. They should be able to, watch a number of videos. They should be able to get inspired by the post. They should come look at the leaderboard. So I think, a lot of it should be zero touch, as in, like, there should not be any hand holding by anybody to become a, let's say, but maybe just for the chapter leads, we just need to do, a little bit more due diligence, so that, we don't really, just appoint anybody for that, really, right? So I think I completely agree with you, but this is my main point. It has to be the onboarding. See, today, refugee onboarding is 100% automated. Nobody is like going and telling them do this, do that, because you can't handle scale if you have to, coach them or, like handhold them or do whatever.
So
yes, Kel.
You'll see we there's not a very high bar in what and we can take that on board and for our final report. But I think that I definitely agree with you that this should not be like, especially if given that we're thinking big with the amount of scale that we want to reach. I guess the only thing to consider is that we don't want people who are maybe don't have the sort of empathy or those key skills that they really need to engage with refugees. But but I think that's the main gist of it anyway.
Got it.
Yeah, I had one additional note to that as well, just in reference to what Anis was just saying. I think one advantage of having like the face-to-face contact would be some of those benefits that we talked about for students, for the peer-to-peer connections, because I think that is like a huge component and benefit to students for joining. And so I think if they lose out on that, it could be a little bit of a detriment. Sure. Another thing to consider too is just like the quality, especially if students have the ability to go in, see, approve something, tick it off, and then the task is marked as completed. If we don't have any kind of quality control on the type of students and like the amount of effort that they expect to put into reviewing, and then especially for the interpersonal ones as well, there could be kind of some potential issues that rise there. And then the last thing I was going to say is one thing that we hope to allow this huge scale, but still allow for all this personal contact and all of this just making sure the level of the quality is of a certain level would be the tier system itself. So
that'll be an idea.
The chapters help make it more feasible, even though we hope that the scale increases tremendously.
Absolutely. Got it.
Amazing. Well, I think we're going to move on to our final strategy. So it's back to you, Catherine, to talk a little bit about evaluation. How are we going to actually kind of track the progress of these students and their contributions to the network and StepUp.One?
That'll be really cool. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of it we've talked on a little bit in passing, but I just want to go a little bit more in depth, but quickly for the sake of time. So essentially we have the online portal, and we want there to be a permanent option that allows refugees or student supporters to flag any emergency issues that arise that would go directly to StepUp.One. But then also for more general feedback, this online portal should give student supporters and refugees a place to give feedback either on specific experiences, the operation of their chapter, or the whole operation of the student supporter network in general, just especially in the beginning, just to help fine tune any particular issues, but also any personal issues that may arise. One challenge we found for the logging element of this portal, though it would be super, super beneficial, as we've discussed, for finding kind of statistics and generating like excitement and buzz around different chapters and kind of all the accomplishments that they're doing, or individual students, and that would definitely feed into our national conference system. Quantity and quality are not necessarily the same, so that's why we have a lot of other opportunities for feedback for the work of the students themselves, and I'll start to go into that a little bit more, but that's just one kind of pitfall that kind of ticking the box can't always guarantee. So feedback from students to StepUp.One, refugees should always have the opportunity to provide feedback on their collaborations with student supporters and how helpful they've been. We think this could always be like on call as needed, but then also kind of a regular termly thing, just to kind of assess, okay, how are our students helping the refugees? Are there any kind of like underlying problems that we could go and resolve in these kind of training workshops? And then also from student supporters to their chapter, we think that they should also always be able to give feedback on the portal, as we've discussed. But also student supporters should be able to email their training rep at any time if they have any particular issues, so they can kind of work that out with their chapter and not put that burden onto StepUp.One. One really cool opportunity that we think there would be for feedback that would really benefit the students and kind of just be another benefit of joining the student supporter network would be from these training workshops. So kind of going in, practicing their skills, honing in on it. Chapter training representative can kind of give that feedback back to the students, tell them what they might be able to work on, what they do really well, and also just general other peers that might be in that platform. And then finally, the executive committee, we think that it would be really useful for all the chapter leads to meet with you to discuss the progress of each chapter and the network as a whole. This could be a really cool opportunity outside of the national conference, maybe before it's feasible or maybe alongside it, to kind of just generate buzz and kind of excitement about the progress of a chapter, maybe for you to address any potential concerns with chapters, maybe their numbers aren't quite as high, any ideas from other chapters and other leads that are doing incredible work and have great success. And so, yeah, we think that there'd just be many different platforms for feedback, constant evaluation, both in a quantitative sense on the portal, and then also in this qualitative sense from that kind of person-to-person contact that these chapters facilitate.
Got it.
Yeah, so I guess just kind of to conclude, obviously we've given you our reasons why we think this network would be an incredible opportunity for StepUp.One. We've spoken about our 5 kind of different strategies, so the different roles that students can take on, the kind of wider structure with the chapters, the hubs, the national conference. We've talked about how this might be marketed through Freshers Fair and also through the various kind of social media accounts. And then we've kind of spoken about the onboarding process, what my application process look like, again, trying to make it so as many people want to sign up as possible, but we also have that kind of quality control element, and then evaluating the progress of these students so that they can feel fulfilled in their roles, but you also know kind of what they're achieving, and it can kind of feed back into growing the network in the future. And so I know we kind of had said we were going to have a discussion about what it would look like in 10 years' time. I know we are a little bit over time, so we'll try and keep this very brief. But, you know, I think ultimately our vision is that it will start with kind of a couple of chapters, keep growing, and there would be, you know, many different individual chapters, regional hubs, national conference kind of in the future, which brings people together. You know, perhaps in terms of scale, they might have to kind of, each chapter might just have to open it up to a certain number of people, first come, first serve kind of basis, and hopefully there would be a kind of big public profile around this student supporter network. We did consider the possibility of financial compensation, because we know that you've kind of been thinking about this, but again, as we've kind of touched on, like with the prize giving, for example, we really want to be mindful about not undermining the kind of altruistic intentions of these students and their kind of intrinsic motivation to help, because we think that is actually often a more powerful motivator. And we hope that we've highlighted the kind of range of skills and advantages that these students can get already without kind of financial compensation. Of course, that is something that you could think about kind of in a few years' time. But I think as we're starting off, we think that students are so used to kind of voluntary opportunities, and because of the number of skills and experiences they can gain, because of the networking, all of this, we think that is very, very exciting in itself, and it kind of doesn't need that element, which could then potentially undermine some of their intrinsic motivation. And we also kind of discussed about kind of the implications of changing it from a voluntary opportunity to a paid opportunity in terms of promoting at universities, because that can actually result in a bit of pushback. You know, we wouldn't be able to promote it in quite the same way as like a student society, for example. It wouldn't be at Freshers Fair. It'd have to be through the careers service. You'd have to market it in a completely different way. You'd probably have to be thinking about kind of additional benefits. And I just think in terms of, you know, if you want this to kind of benefit people, you know, straight away, then I think kind of making it more accessible in terms of it being a voluntary thing, in terms of it being kind of a little bit more flexible, would be helpful. So that's kind of our thoughts on that. But yeah, ultimately we believe that, you know, this student supporter network could just grow and grow and help you to expand beyond the Kakuma refugee camp, which I know kind of you've been talking about with the other team. And so we hope that we're able to kind of facilitate that mission with all of our 5 strategies.
Awesome. I think Zoe and team, you know, this is fantastic. I think I truly believe, you know, this would be the game changer for us, because I think people, you know, I think StepUp.One is just a name, isn't it? You know, it's ultimately people trying to push the other side. So this whole wealth redistribution that I'm attempting has to happen through people to people, right? And I truly think, you know, students could definitely, you know, make a huge contribution to this, you know, because there are jobs, you know, and these guys are doing the jobs. It's just that they need this little push and a little encouragement that, look, we are always there, you know, to you know, you can always fall back on us, and we are there to, you know, help you. Is such a huge motivation, right? It's almost like, you know, we are there, right? So I truly think this could be a massive game changer, even if we implement it badly and poorly. This is what I honestly think. If we did it really good, like a world-class organization, you know, set up their communities, we can do it. We can make the game changing, you know, quicker. But I truly believe that, you know, this will be a massive game changer. So yeah, thank you.
Does anyone have any other questions or outstanding comments that they wanted to contribute?
I think I'd just like to say thank you for allowing us to work on this project. I think it's been extremely interesting, and you know, we've learned so much from this process. So I can only imagine the amount of benefit that other students would get from kind of working in a student supporter network. And it's been fantastic to work with my team, and we're looking forward to sending you our final report. We've just got a couple more bits to add to it, but hopefully that can be sent to you by tomorrow morning. And hopefully that will kind of illustrate all of the points that we've kind of rushed through today, and you're able to kind of take that forward and build on it, and
absolutely, this is incredibly useful. I would just advise all of you, you know, I don't need any promotions or anything like that, but you should ideally, you know, create social media post, or I can ask, you know, some of my guys to create it for you. But ideally you should do it, and then, you know, put it out as well, you know, along with the report, because whatever we do, it's always good to do these things in public and transparent, and, you know, so that, you know, we can always trace back and see that the good work that you guys have done, right? It's always good to celebrate everything, you know, in public, good or bad, doesn't matter.
Ben has given me ownership of the LinkedIn page, so we now have the capacity to do that where we couldn't do it before.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, guys, I think thank you very much. I'll take leave right now, but yeah, amazing work. Thank you very much. I truly wish, you know, I and maybe, you know, some of you would be there, you know, for the journey ahead, but I will definitely implement this. I definitely will implement this, because it's good or bad. I think I want to see it through. I want to see, you know, if it actually works or not, right? But I will do this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anise.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Great job,
Cheers,
Team One.
everybody.